This is Upside Down in the Middle of Nowhere, chapters 41, 42, 43, and 44. The Bowman kids followed me except for Lukey, who was latched onto my hand. Oh, look, I pointed to where Mr. Highpockets was lying on his side facing the wall with his back to us. Y'all are going to love him. He does tricks. You mean like magic tricks? I asked Martha. Yeah, I said, stopping walking. Something was wrong, and a tiny thump started in the back of my head, and our cots were empty. My heart was about to pound right out of my chest, and I stood there. What's up? Matthew asked. Let's. I let go of Lukey's hand, and I couldn't take my eyes off the empty space where Celia and Kyla should have been, waiting on me. The shaking started in my knees and spread every which way so fast there was no stopping it. My breathing came in huffs. My sisters, the cots, they're empty, and I felt like I was going to throw up. Ain't that Celia over there? Matthew said, all calm. And I looked, and there they were. Celia was standing up in the middle of the three mamas, and Kyla was all snug as a bug on Mama's son's lap. Celia gave me and me a little hey wave. I sat down on one of the cots, buried my head in my hands, and I rocked back and forth for a good while, knowing I'd crumble up and die if I ever lost Celia or my baby sister. Celia never knew about me thinking I'd lost her, and Kayla, and she must have thought I'd lost my mind. Though when I came up walking behind her while she was telling the three mamas one of her "I read this in a book one time" stories, I all but tackled her with a big old hug, and I couldn't stop myself. Celia was my sister, and right then it didn't matter which one way or another if she liked me or not. Hello, hello, Mama Son said, waving us in closer like she was having us into her house for supper. Where have you been, Armani? And I was getting worried about you, and Celia wiggled out of my hug. Kayla was crying for you. Kayla scooched off Mama Son's lap and buried her face in my belly, and I hugged her head. And I introduced the Bowman kids to Celie. Her and Martha came together like pea in a pod. Celie was giggling with the Bowmans, and the Mamas were saying, hey, and I walked thanking Jesus up in my head, and I sat there a good long time while hugging my knees when I spotted Mr. Highpocket sitting up against the wall. I stared at Kayla sleeping, restless up in between Celia and Martha, and then I glanced over to where Matthew had slid cots in front of him and the boys. Everyone was knocked out napping except for me and Mr. Highpockets, and I slipped my boots on the go and got up. There was no way I was going to be able to sleep ever again, and I told someone was, and I told so until I told someone what was sitting heavy on my mind. Chapter 42. I pressed my back against the wall and let myself slide down into a good sit the way I'd seen Mr. Highpockets do 1,000 times, and for a good while he just sat there sharing space. Somehow he knew it wasn't magic that I needed right then. Kayla's sick. My voice was barely more than a whisper. Celia don't know it yet, but in the morning I'm taking Kayla to the clinic so she could see a doctor. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Mr. Highpockets nodding away at my words. She hasn't had but maybe one cracker to eat since yesterday, and I don't know why she won't drink for me no more. Without lifting my head from the wall, I turned and looked at my friend, and his sad, full, watery eyes tugged on me. And I'm going to miss you, I choked on a sob, and he scrunched up his shoulders and tilted his head in a what you talking about way. And I didn't have the energy to try to explain to him that when I went marching into that clinic to get help for my sister, we'd be turned over to the authorities for sure. My head found the man's shoulder, and it was hard and lumpy, not comfortable like Meemaw's. And Kayla had to get better. And if that meant all of us going to foster care or something, oh well. I swallowed the cry, trying to find its way out. Mama and Daddy weren't coming, and I could barely breathe. Chapter 43. A soft voice floated into my ear, and the smell of juicy fruit gum made its way to my nose. Hush, hush, honeybee. It's going to be all right. I shivered with cold. Soft mama-like arms wrapped around me and took me in. It was Miss Priscilla Nash sat on the floor with her back up against the hard wall and stroked my head resting it on her lap, and I wanted to stay there forever. I looked up, and there was Mr. Highpockets looking down, keeping watch over me. He smiled a smile of worry, leaving, and then he turned and walked away. Do you feel like talking? She said quiet into my ear. I can't. I know. She purred the words like a mama cat. I know, child. Everything's going to be all right. It's my fault. All of it. My head did a teeny hop every time I hiccuped between my messy sobs and sniffs. You see, honeybee, it's all going to get better. And she stroked my lumpy, frizzed-out hair. I pulled my heavy head up, and she right away caught my face with a wad of tissue. And my own mama hadn't wiped my nose for me since I was 6 or 7, but I didn't care, and I let the lady wipe whatever she thought needed wiping. My face was all swelled up, and even my lips poofed out. Miss Nash? Please call me Priscilla, her soft, round voice made up for a matched Her face matched her mama-like arms. Miss Priscilla, you don't understand. Everything that's happened to my family is my fault. Miss Priscilla stuck some tissue in my hand. Nothing's happened is anybody's fault. It was a terrible, spiteful storm, and she let out a long, sweet-smelling sigh. I know. I picked up the tissue, but you don't understand. My eyes got heavier. Miss Priscilla leaned in and laid her cheek up on the side of my wet, gooey face. Her nutshell brown cheek felt warm, and the flower garden smell on it was strong. All I wanted for my birthday was a puppy, and the words came out of my mouth in a calm whisper, and I turned my head up and let my heavy eyes fall on the sad eyes of Miss Priscilla, and I wasn't crying no more, but the tears kept coming, and I broke my promise to Cricket. I told her I'd always take care of her and keep her safe. Miss Priscilla dabbed at her own eyes with the tissue. Oh, child, I don't know what in the world you're talking about, but I do know that whatever it is that got you so upset, she blew her nose into she blew her nose hard into her tissue. I'm here to help any way I can. She shoved the used up tissue into her pocket of her red vest. She didn't understand. I'm sorry, I mumbled. Hush now and rest, she said. You don't have a thing to be sorry about. Yes, I did. I had plenty to be sorry about, and I sat there all snug and sad with my eyes stuck shut. She kept on with her hushing. Kayla's sick, I said. She needs a doctor. I know I've been wanting to talk to you about that, Miss Priscilla said. Oh my. Would you look at that? She sounded like Meemaw when she said them words. Walking towards us was all the kids. Matthew Bowman had poor little Kayla in her arms where she was resting her head on his shoulder. Lukey and little John stood behind their brother playing shy with me and Miss Priscilla, and I held my arms out and Kayla leaned down wanting to be with me. Celie and Martha took seats on the floor with me and Miss Priscilla. Celia was so young, and I wondered if she was ever going to forgive me for ruining her life when I confessed to the people in charge at the clinic that we were the kids without parents. What's going on? Looking at Matthew said, looking from me to Miss Priscilla. Oh, Matthew, Miss Priscilla said. You know Matthew? I interrupted. They looked at each other and nodded. Sure, Miss P's been looking out for us ever since we got off the bus, and I was shocked as collard greens and ice water. Matthew smiled and all dimply at Miss Priscilla. She's been helping me sort some stuff out, with CPS because of what happened to Auntie Mama and us being foster kids and all. And he walked over and offered his hand to Miss Priscilla, and she shook it, and she stood up with a grunt. I don't understand, I said to Matthew. You talked to CPS? My tired heart went racing again. Well, yeah, Matthew shrugged with his shoulders, and his smile looked more like a smirk. Did you report us to CPS? Tell me the truth. Miss Priscilla raised her eyebrows and looked at Matthew. He shrugged again. What? Tell me. I want to know if them people from CPS are coming. I felt like I was sucking all my oxygen through a straw. Celia looked fast from one of us to the other, panic showing plain as day in her eyes. Honeybee, you're breaking my heart. I am CPS. Celia gasped. No, you're not, I said. She sure is, Armani, Matthew said. How'd you not know that? I don't. So are you taking us to jail now? She whimpered. Good heavens, no. Why on earth would I do that, darling? I'm just here to help you, and I was assigned to the task of looking after the unattended children, like all of you. She swooped her hand at the group of us. But I seen you, I said, and I seen you the night we got here, and you took them two boys, and I thought you were taking them to CPS so they could haul them off to jail or foster care or something. Lukey and little John's heads popped up when I said the F word. Oh, sweetie, I don't know which boys you're talking about, unless you mean Tyrone and Trevor, she said, and pointed about 4 rows over, and as sure as my mama can make a pie, the tall kid with a huge afro nodded hey, and went back to doing whatever he was doing. Me and Celia just stared at each other. It's chapter 44. It took a whole lot of sweet talking from Miss Priscilla and Ash to convince me that she was still the same old caring friend she'd been before I learned the truth about her real identity, but the reason I didn't go on and on about the CPS thing was on account of the way it seemed Kayla couldn't even bother to hold her own head up for more than a second or two. Kayla needs a doctor, I said, noticing for the first time how much lighter she felt in my arms, and I know I should have asked for help sooner, but, well, we'll do the best we can with whatever we know, honeybee. The important thing is that you're asking now, and it takes a lot of courage to ask for help. What do you think is wrong with her? Matthew asked. My guess is our little Kayla has the water bug. They've been treating a lot of folks in here left and right for gastrointestinal virus, and she gave a little shiver. It's a nasty old bug. Gastro what? Celia asked. What's that? It's an ugly tummy sickness, sweetheart. They say it's from drinking tainted water. Right away, I remember when Kayla's head dipping under the poisoned water when she fell out of the cooler boat. But don't you worry, Miss Priscilla said. Celia straightened herself up tall. I'm not going to let some big old bug mess with any of my kids. And she winked up at the group of us. Kayla's belly rumbled up against me, and I knew the way she shivered wasn't from being cold. It was because the heat coming off her little body had me in a full-blown sweat. "Why don't you all get to something to eat?" I said to the kids, and I needed to talk to Miss Priscilla alone. "No problem. Take your time, Armani," Matthew said, and stepped away with Celia and his brother and sister, and I fixed my attention on Miss Priscilla, and "I want you to take my sister to the clinic. She needs to see a doctor, and maybe you can get her quicker than me." Miss Priscilla looked at me and raised her eyebrows just the teeniest bit, and I passed the sleepy, belly aching lump that was Kayla to the lady in the red vest, knowing for the first time in a long time that I was doing the right thing. "Well, then," she said, and dabbed her eyes with what looked like a piece of used up tissue, "let's not waste another second of this precious day." I left the plastic bag under my cot while I laid the clothes out, one piece at a time, thankful that nothing there was too foo-foo or frilly. Celia and Martha were playing clapping game like happy fools, and the sound of their giggles floated through the thick, sticky air like an after-supper breeze. Lukey and Little John colored in the coloring books that stood in line almost an hour for, and Matthew was plopped on a cot eating another cold cheese sandwich. "Hey," I said to Matthew, "do you mind watching Celia while I go change?" I held up the clothes for him to see. "Nah, go ahead." He looked over at the girls slapping each other's hands, and his eyes fell on my boots. "They have shoes at the clothes station, you know. Just get up there and tell them what size you need." And he filled my face. "Yeah, I know. I got some new ones from Miss Priscilla," and I tried to smile and tuck flyaway hairs behind my ear, but they wouldn't stay. "So anyway, you don't mind watching her? I won't be long." "It don't matter, but I don't get it. If you got new shoes, how come you're wearing them fishing boots?" Matthew smiled and shoved more sandwich in his already full mouth. I stuck out my hip and planted it hard there. "Look, it ain't none of your business what kind of shoes I do or don't wear. What do you care anyway?" And the boy smiled an annoying gap-toothed smile of his, and I wanted to slap him. "Well, I don't care, but why do you care so much about whether I do or not?" "Whatever, for your information, I don't care one dang bit if you care." "So," Matthew said, he stood up, yawned, and stretched his arms above his head, "if you don't care, then why don't you take them old boots off and get some decent shoes to fit?" And my eyes stung, and I forced my idiot feet to move, and I took 2 or 3 steps away from Matthew, and I stopped back facing him. There they were, my meemaws. The words were barely more than a whisper, and she gave them to me. She wanted me to have them. She's dead. She died in our attic, and I have to wear her boots. Oh, man, I'm sorry. I didn't know. And I wiped my face with a pile of clean clothes. "You know," he rambled on, "now I'm getting a closer look at him. I kind of like those boots. They ain't that bad." And I half turned and looked at him, and he swiped the bangs out of his eyes, and I could see the sorry sitting there, and I understand why you don't want to be taking them off just yet. It's okay," I said. "You didn't know." Me and Mima's ugly garden boots clomped off to change in my new clothes. That is the end of 44.